that a Middletown State Rep, Quentin Q. Williams, died yesterday in a car crash. So I was hoping that before we got started, we could do a moment of silence for him. Okay, I don't actually know how long those are technically supposed to go. So we'll get started. It's 8:34. First item on the agenda is public comment. Is there anybody from the public who has anything to say, any comments to make to the board? A few guests. Any comments? Hearing none, we'll move forward to attendance. Rom.
Present.
Bob.
Here.
Julie.
Here.
Patrick.
Good morning, I'm here.
Michael. Saw.
Present.
Ajit.
Present.
Lauren.
Here.
Jan.
Hello. Happy Friday.
Fred.
Here.
Maura.
Here.
Paul.
Here.
And Susan. I don't think Susan has joined yet. Okay.
Cool.
And then I see a number of guests from our participating agencies. Welcome, everybody. Somebody just called in. Can you let me know who you are? Can the person who just called in just let me know who you are?
I think they come on muted. So is there, what is it, star
Oh.
6 or something to?
It's Jen. I'm just listening in.
Oh, okay, great. Thanks. Okay, so the first item that we have on the agenda is to go over the policy and process updates. So we have a data security process update. So I'm gonna turn it over to Coral and Scott.
Did you want to say anything first, Scott, or?
No, you're good to go.
Okay.
If you need me to screen share, let me know.
No, you're good. So we are going to discuss the data security policy and process that we have discussed in the last couple of meetings. So for the process, this is mostly based off of the flowchart at this point that Jan and CSU sent. We did make some edits to the flowchart to include OPM's role. So I'm first going to share that document. So all of what was originally there was the data recipient section and the participating agency section. We've added the OPM section, which basically the biggest change is that OPM will, of course, review the data request. At the same time, they will look up the data recipient in the assessment library, ensure that they have a complete data security questionnaire that is less than a year old. If not, we will request an updated data security questionnaire, and then we will send those to the participating agencies with that data request for the participating agencies to review and conduct a risk assessment. The participating agencies will review the data security questionnaires, and then along with the request, either approve, reject, or suggest modifications. They will then send that to OPM, where we will notify the data recipient of what was either the approval, rejection, or modifications, and then communicate back with the participating agencies after the data recipients have modified it if that was suggested. And then if the data request is approved, move on to the data sharing process. Are there any questions so far?
Hi, this is Jan. Thanks, Coral, for going through that. And I'm happy to see us working on this process. I'm really glad that we're implementing this kind of a thing for security. I just had a question. The very last part you said, if the security review is approved, then we work on the request. Is that what you said, or did I miss the?
So I foresee them being at the same time. So the data request submission and the security questionnaire and the process of approving those being simultaneous,
Yeah.
I think is
Okay,
the
good.
current idea.
Yeah. Thank you. That's kind of I was thinking too, because you need the request to understand yeah, okay, thank you, that's all.
So I'll share the process document, which you were sent yesterday. Again, this is just pretty much a more detailed version of what is in the flowchart. I won't read all of this because that would take a long time, but you can review it. And if you have any questions or comments, we can discuss.
What kind of, this is Jan again, thanks. What kind of timeline do we have to review and provide comments back?
I don't think we have put in a timeline, but that is something we can, is there, I don't think there is a current timeline for reviewing requests.
Or like, what's the process to like making this final?
I think given the timing, since we got this out pretty late, we're hoping we walk through the flow chart this at a high level today, and then give folks, the month between now and the next data governing board meeting to iron out any questions. And then ideally we'd be ready to finalize this. It would be good if we could finalize it the next meeting. If that's not realistic, we can take more time, but I think we've got basically a month between now and the next meeting with these documents in hand. And this is where get to give a quick overview of them, go through any questions so that people have a sense of what they're reading and engaging with. And then you've got the, better part of a month. We could do 3 weeks or something so that we have time to take comments and send it back to people. But essentially, I think we're trying to get this circulated, questions on the table, and then have the next meeting ideally be the point where we bring this to resolution.
That makes sense.
In
And
general,
so,
we haven't heard any like overall, concerns about the process, and there's little things to iron out, but this seemed.
right, that makes sense. And I appreciate having the time because I'm thinking this started with the security folks who probably want to have the security folks just give it a blessing too at the end. I don't know if that would be the agency's responsibility, like I could take it to our security person, or if you guys are planning on coordinating something. Is it up to each sort of agency to take it to whatever security person they have if they have one? Or are you going to coordinate sort of a final blessing from security gods?
No, I think such a thing were possible. I think it's the agency responsibility, really, with the caveat that we have Bob from BITS as our representative from state IT world to sort of intermediate and provide the link to state IT, but obviously that does not cover everybody that's here.
Great, thank you.
Were there any other questions or comments? Okay, well, if you could review those documents that were sent out yesterday that were just shared and provide us with any feedback, we will put that into the second draft that Scott just said we will share at the next meeting.
Awesome, thanks. So what Coral just said, we will plan to approve this at the February meeting. So please share your comments and feedback. So then the next item is the incident response plan. We initially approved this last April, and our plan is to review and renew it and approve it for April 2023. And now I'm going to hand it over to Scott.
I think we're going to do two things kind of at once here because they go hand in hand. One is go through the incident summary that you all received late yesterday again, but we're hoping to do is have some discussion about it and give you time after the meeting to digest to make sure it fully sort of addresses the issues. I think Patrick will walk through that in a second. And then that goes kind of hand in hand. We have two, I guess there's, just to give the overview, there's a handful of like different interlocking documents for data security here. And so you're getting them in different, you're getting them on kind of all at once. So we have a policy for data security primarily focused on requesters for P20 Win. We have our own sort of data security policies, some of which are captured in the legal agreements. That those ask us to develop an incident response plan, which we developed last year, and we want to keep up to date on an annual basis. And so that's what Katie's talking about. And then for the incident that occurred last fall, we have, again, in the legal documents and as part of the process we talked with to follow up with that document and follow up with it with the data governing board, make sure the steps have been taken to kind of remediate that reduced risk in the future. That also should feed back into those policy documents. So when we have recommendations, here's something we should do, that should go into our data security policy or incident response plan and so on. So there should be like a linkage between the policy documents, the plans and processes, and then, the actual events that occur in the real world. So we're trying to, link these together in the meeting. And like Katie's saying, this board, developed, approved the first incident response plan for P20 Win last year, and we want to keep that up to date. And I think we're targeting, last year was approved in April, so we're targeting to have, essentially the same timeline this year for April again, which means we can start the process of looking for revisions and changes to that. Some of those revisions, I think, would come out because of the unfortunate circumstance that we had the opportunity to use the incident response plan once now last year. And so we're going to learn from that process, make sure that when something happens that we learn from it, modify the policy documents to reflect that. And so I think Patrick, kind of whenever you're ready, we'll go through the steps for that incident summary. We've reviewed these with CSU, SDE, DOL, the sort of impacted agencies, and I think they're comfortable with the steps that are outlined there, but we want to make sure the whole board also gets gains an understanding of what those steps are and can make any further suggestions to address that. And then again, like, this is kind of what we're doing is a one-time response to it. We want to make sure that when we make those one-time changes that they go into policy documents and the things that we do on an ongoing basis. Patrick,
All right. Good morning.
Great.
And I will take responsibility for the fact that you got it so late last night, and I apologize for that. I've been, after 2 years of not even having a sniffle, I've been very sick over the last several weeks, and but I am hanging in here. So with that being said, I will pull up the document. Pull up the document that you all got last night. So on September 15th, there was an incident that was reported that 2 files that should not have been transmitted to researchers for data request 17 were sent as part of a transmission of 21 files. Notification to affected agencies took place in accordance with policy. Both files were destroyed, including backups, and no data ever left a secure environment. The correct files, excuse me, in response, we are taking a number of steps, and I do hope you'll have a chance to read through these over the next week or so and get it back to us if there's any suggestions for changes or improvements. But I think that we've already gotten some feedback and we've incorporated that, and so I think we're pretty much at the end of this particular incident. And again, some of the delay in getting to this end, much of it, I will take responsibility for that in terms of just my own incapacity for a little bit. But I'm back. So in response, we're taking the following steps to reduce the chances of this ever happening again. I wish I could guarantee it will never happen again, but the cause of this incident was human error. And of course, we all continue to be human. One thing I do believe our measures address is the time between the incident and notification. Part of the steps outlined in this document And I know you can't really read it as it flies by your screen, but you do have it in your email. Part of the steps outlined will prevent such a gap in the future, and I think we can really guarantee that that gap will never happen again. We have not only added additional documentation, but follow up with data recipients to ensure that only the correct files were transmitted so that immediate action can be taken if such an error to occur in the future. And I really believe that the documentation and follow-up in and of itself will reduce the likelihood of such errors because we will have extra eyes on the process. I think everyone acknowledges that at the time the incident occurred, the data integration hub was understaffed. We were well along in the process of addressing that when the incident occurred. Uh, but the fact at that moment we were understaffed, and that put additional pressure on the staff that were there, which of course increases the possibility of human error. Uh, since the incident occurred, we have added Sheehan to our team. This is a very important addition. She is going to be doing a great deal of the documentation and follow-up that is outlined in the steps that we are taking, and I'm extremely happy to welcome her to our team and to have the additional capacity to make the changes outlined in this report. And that's all I have to say this morning, but I'm certainly happy to answer any questions or listen to any discussion that anyone might have about this.
So Patrick, I think this is just a good example of moving forward, right? I mean, I think it was a great job to identify the issue and then come in with a resolution. So nice work.
Thank you.
I want to thank you too, Patrick, for the changes you've made internally. I know that can be tough when people are busy, and I'm sure you're still busy, even though Shannon's joined the team. I'm sure of that. And so I think I agree the documentation is great. I know that there was just one piece I want to highlight for folks to notice. One of the issues with the incident was that a matching file with all of the identifiers was sent. And so that probably wouldn't have happened at all if it had been deleted in a timely manner. And so that's why you'll also see when you review the incident plan that there's a piece there that says that the deletion of the matching files needs to be done and documented. So that's another control on that particular point that they've put in place, and I appreciate that greatly. Thank you.
Add two things to this one. I also want to, I'm grateful to Patrick and Sheehan and the labor team and Liam for working on this, but also to Katie, who really led the effort to provide the notification, pull people together early on, and write up the report for here, which is unheralded and difficult work. But we hopefully, we will learn from this process. The other thing, just for people to know, there are implications not just for I think labor and us in this document. There are implications for you as the agencies, both as members of the Data Governance Board, to review and understand this fully and make sure that you're comfortable with it, but also for your agencies for transmittal of data. There's some things added in to provide hopefully more consistency on the file naming conventions, more documentation of when data are sent from one agency to the end recipient. That is something that we do not really perceive in the current system. So there's great potential for some risk there. So we added the same sort of controls that are in place for labor to that transmission of data for other agencies. I think that's a very reasonable measure, but there are things that will affect how you do work as well in this. So just make sure to read it with that eye as well.
Can I ask a question, Scott, on that point? That's great, because it's right. It's not just about files leaving DOL, but it's about files going from the participating agencies to recipients and participating agencies to DOL as well. What we're looking at, what Patrick shared, is the summary of the incident itself with the remediated steps. Which document has is it the incident, maybe it's in, I'm trying to think which policy or process document it would be. Maybe Carl knows this, where it would be for the general process. Like, will we as CSU, if we have to send a file to a recipient, Yale or something, will we have a similar requirement to log those files, and will be similar sort of follow-up about, we're gonna send the file on this date, it's gonna be picked up on the same date. Like, is that control process in place for other things now? Is it in a document? Is it
This is a
coming?
great segue to
There we
the
go.
next topic. Because it is, and it's in the actually, this is, we couldn't have set it up better. The last step in the incident summary is to have a test data set, or what we're now, I think, calling like a dry run, so that people can actually, like, first off, we can make sure, is everything where it's supposed to be? Like, is there a link that's missing, or it's the wrong file in some place? Let's actually test this and make sure it works. In this case, those, the files and logs for that, or should be, I guess this is why we test these things, are in the data matching process and policy, because that's covering the transmittal of data and the separation of the files and so on. So they should be referenced and either linked or accompany that. And then I will then segue, I think, to Ashley. We'll talk about the fact that very soon you're going to get fake data in order to test this type of thing out, so that everybody, truly understands kind of in a hands-on way, like, here's how these things are working.
All right, that rings a bell. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Scott. So as Scott said, we're pretty much ready to start our dry run process. In preparation, some of you are going to receive an email hopefully today from Liam to set up folders, SS2P folders. In that email, there will be instructions as to how to set that up. So just follow along there. You're probably gonna have to have some contact with Liam. This is only for people who don't have folders set up already. So if you don't, be expecting that. Looking forward though, you will get an email from me early next week with a package of documents that include instructions on how this dry run will go. That's basically going to be the data matching process document. So just follow what we currently have. You'll get your fake data. You'll get fake data requests, so you know what data to be pulling for each of you're going to be involved in 2 fake data requests. So that will all be sent via email early next week. If there's any questions that you have, once you get the documents and start looking at them and what is expected of you, happy to help. So please, line of communication is open. I think that's all I have on that, unless anyone has any questions now.
Do you want to just share what documents will be included in the package that you'll be sending everybody?
Yeah, so you'll get a fake data request, or 2 fake data requests, because everyone's going to be involved in 2 fake data requests. You will get with that also the variables that are being requested from those fake data requests. You will get a master sheet of fake data for your agency. So there will be PII, fake PII information on it, along with fake analytical data on it. So you'll need to pull the correct variables for each of the data requests. You will get the data matching policy and process documents, just so that you can refer to those for what to be sending along the way. And then in the email itself, I will send some instructions as well. So.
Another question, what's the natural deletion date for that Axway site? Or for that secure site? So does it get wiped out every 30 days, 60 days, 90 days? Or archived, or?
Yes, Scott.
There is a wipeout date. I forget off the top of my head what it
Oh,
is.
that's
I want
okay.
to say 30, but I just can't remember unless Bob or Patrick remember. We can
Okay,
ask.
great. Yeah, and sometimes it's on like, yeah, I guess it would be, the DSS one has 30, 60 days, just it's for safety of the files.
Yes, I believe it's 30 days, but one of the things obviously that we're implementing in the new procedures is we're really going to follow up with the recipients. I mean, one of the things that has happened in the past is that we have transmitted data to folks, they haven't gotten it, that time period has gone by, then they go and look for the data and it's not there. And, we're just, that's part of modernizing our process here is to make sure that when we send the data, the recipients get it, they acknowledge they get it, and then we can take it off the system even before the wipeout date. And so, certainly the plan is not to have data sitting out there on the Axway system, even though it's a very secure system.
Right, right.
The plan is not to have the data sitting out there until that wipeout date comes, but to actually delete it before then. So, uh, although yes, there is a uh, automatic wipeout at a certain date, we hope that that's not anything that's actually really going to become important, because we're going to be deleting the data before then as part of this new procedure.
Thanks for that,
Thank
Patrick. I say for reference, if anybody, if it matters, CSU's practice will be that we'll do it the same day. We'd like to know like when the file's coming, and we'll grab it the same day and move it into our own secure environment so it doesn't sit there at all and then delete it. That's what we're going to be doing.
Yeah, that's the practice that we're going to be implementing as well. We'll be reaching out to data recipients to let them know that it's there and to please download it immediately.
Awesome.
Any other comments or questions on the dry run? Okay, so the next item is the data matching software that we're currently using, Data Ladder, and I'm gonna let Scott and Patrick take this.
Yeah, I can start. And Julia, I'll put the link in. It's 60 days, I think, for the current SFTP. So Patrick, I think maybe cover a little more of this. This is another sort of job for the data governing board. One of the responsibilities of the data governing board is approving the tools that we are using for the data matching and transmission. And so you will have an opportunity sometime in the next 500 days to approve a new tool for data matching for reasons that Patrick can go into. So we have some advance notice of this, but it is central sort of technology that we're reliant on for P20 Win, and so we want to get ahead of it. We got sort of early notice about changes to the software that we're using, and got some time, but within the next year and a half, essentially, or year and a quarter, I guess, this group will have to review, make some decisions about the new tools to use for this, so that we're all understand and are comfortable with what's being used. I think the other thing, just to put in people's radar before we start going into this, is obviously many of the agencies here use or conduct some kind of data matching on their own internally. I know a few agencies have their own software that they use for their own projects that they manage, and so this is also a good opportunity to make sure that we are learning from and leveraging each other's work. So if there's something that you're using that you are thinking of, this is start thinking about whether that's something you'd like, and whether we want to test that out for potential future use. Patrick,
Okay. Yes. Yeah. I somehow, Scott, I feel like you started at the middle. So let me go back to the beginning. The beginning is this. We use a tool called Data Ladder to do all the matching. And we received notice from the company that produces Data Ladder that when our license expires, which will happen in about 500 days, so it's almost 2 years, that license will not be renewed. The company that owns Data Ladder has been sold, and they're basically moving, they're changing their business model so that customers like us will no longer be part of their, they're just not that interested in the type of customer that we are. So we are going to need to find an alternate or a new tool, maybe even a better tool. We'll see. Let's hope out there to do the matching. And so this just happened recently. We have. I'm still trying to get my mind around it, but we need to move forward. And we have enough time, fortunately, to find a new tool, to test it out, to make sure we like it before we implement. And so we're open to ideas at this point in terms of what should be the next iteration of the data matching software that we will need to have to continue our work as P20 Win.
just add two things on this because we went back through some of the old documentation yesterday. So two things to for folks to think about is what are, again, what you may be using or aware of already, and what requirements that we would have as a system for the data matching tools. I think that's really like a critical role for the data governing board to say, like, what are the things that we need? And so in the sort of typical cycle for, I don't know, software development, whether you are building or buying, like we develop the requirements, what are the things that we need, identify solutions, vet the solutions, choose a solution. And again, we've got 500 days or so to do that, although really, we want to make sure that something's in place and can be used, before that. So one of the things that, or particularly for folks that have been involved a little longer, we had a technical review committee that met for much of 2021. One of the things that was talked about at some length in that group is the tools and the technology for data matching. That's something we gave some scrutiny to. I think the determination was at that time, like, no changes needed, the data ladder is working perfectly well. That sort of decision has been taken out of our hands, but some of the documentation from that goes through, like, what are we going to need for matching data? What are the requirements for the system, particularly with, at that time, the addition of new agencies with sort of a different types of identifiers, different tracking, and we went through both what sort of general requirements are and what some agencies are doing where there's internal matching already. So we'll resurface some of that documentation, but probably having a similar setup where there's like a working group or a subcommittee that could meet, go through some of the requirements for this would be helpful for the process. Again, we have a lot of advance notice, but it's a significant decision, and going through making sure the requirements are clear upfront is critical. If we miss something that people need as part of this process that you need because you do this as part of your agency's work already, then that will help us to prevent kind of a less than satisfactory outcome down the line. That's it. We'll send some of the documentation from the technical review group around, which I think many people have, but I know not everybody was in that group. And we can, I think, if there's folks that are interested from agencies, having like a working group to convene and start working on this would be helpful. It's not, again, incredibly urgent, but we don't want to sit on it for too long either.
So could we do like raised hands to see who would be interested in joining that working group?
I'm happy to volunteer Liam, since I am his boss.
So we have a working group of Liam.
Yeah, I'll have somebody from the SDE side too. Not sure exactly who. We do a lot of data matching, not like research requests, but just loading to our data warehouse involves loading a lot of data that doesn't have our state identifier. And there's a lot of probabilistic matching done with SAS tools. So I think maybe somebody from that unit might be good to shed some light on it. So I will have someone from our side.
Great.
I'm not volunteering, Katie, but I can share that I could go back to the original work that we did when we selected Data Ladder, and the requirements that we may have had, or any document. I can just look through that old stuff to see what might be useful to unearth as a starting place.
Sure.
And
That'd
I
be
know
great.
that, yeah, the other states, of course, were doing these matching. Some have, very different systems, so their approach wouldn't be the same. But I know there's probably a lot of, there's other states who have other models that may even have code, since most of the states' P20W systems were built with federal funding. They may be able to simply share, if they have some scripting, some code that we could just copy too, if we were to build something. If there isn't another tool we could just purchase. I mean, there are big firms, Informatica, that kind of with big systems, really expensive ways of doing this. I don't think we need that personally.
Great. That'd be awesome. Thank you. Anybody else? Well, think about it and get back to me.
Katie, I may end up volunteering our data scientist once I hire one, which
Okay.
should happen within the next month to 2 months.
Okay.
Just about to start setting up interviews, so coming soon. But we use right now an MDM solution by a company called Civica. It's called Multiview. We're not especially happy with it, so there's that. We've been looking at a data quality platform called Atacama, which is a really powerful kind of platform. Relatively expensive, although not nearly on the level of Informatica, for instance, which was, I think, 5 times the cost of Atacama. So that is the kind of platform that could be scaled and used by multiple agencies, we think. So our project kind of took a different turn. So actually investing in Atacama is on hold for the moment, probably for another 3 months or so, 3 or 4 months anyway. So I'll keep you posted on that.
Great, thanks.
Yep.
Anybody else? I'll give you guys some time to think about it. I'll follow up. So are there any other comments or questions? None? Okay. So the next item on the agenda is our agency review processes. So as you know, we want to document everything. We want to make sure that we understand how your agencies function, and we want to make sure that we can best communicate that with people who are requesting your data so they have an understanding of what the process looks beyond just submitting a form. And so I know that Ashley's reached out to many of you and talked to some of you, and I'll let her talk more about what she's doing.
Yeah, thanks, Katie. So as Katie said, it's for some agencies, after that form gets submitted, it's different what goes on. You all have your own sort of internal processes. For your sake and for requester's sake, it's good to document these things because it cuts down on the work that you guys have to do so that you don't have to have these continuous conversations every time a request comes in, and also just so that you get everything packaged at once, and so you don't have to have these, again, continuous conversations. For requesters, it's good because then again, they know what they're getting themselves into. So just kind of documenting that. There are a couple of agencies that I've already reached out to and talked to about their own processes. I'm aware that some agencies do have their own, and I'm not aware about some agencies. So I will be reaching out, and if you guys have anything, I'm happy to set up calls and document it. If you have your own documentation that's, again, already done, like, great. So kind of just be on lookout for conversations with me about those things, or if you have documentation, feel free to send that at your earliest convenience.
Great. Any comments or questions about this? All right, moving right along. So the last item on the agenda is the data request summary. So I sent the PDF to you all yesterday afternoon. We haven't had any new data requests submitted since our last meeting. However, the BCG request has been submitted to the participating agencies. To keep that process moving along, it'd be great to know if you approved the data request or if you have modifications that need to be made, if you have any questions. That way we can just keep this process moving forward. We also have shared a couple of other data requests with agencies. So the value add of career clusters has been shared with SDE and DOL, and we're still waiting on feedback from a few of the other requests that are in review. But other than that, not many changes, but just wanted to make sure that the BCG request was on your radar. If you haven't seen it in your email, it is in there. Any comments, thoughts, or questions?
Yeah, I got the request right before Christmas, so haven't had a chance to finish reviewing it yet. It looks pretty good. I think there's only a couple small tweaks to be made to the list of fields, but generally speaking, I think it looks okay.
Great.
Got to vet it still with my boss and legal, and do all that
Right.
work. But yep.
Perfect. Thanks for that update. Okay. So our next steps. So we'll be in touch regarding the working group for the new data matching technology. Please send your comments and feedback on the data security process as we plan to approve that at the February meeting. I think that those are the only big items. Scott, do you have anything else to add?
Not that I can think of.
Okay. If there are no further comments or questions, we can wrap up early. Okay. Have a great day and a great weekend, everyone.
Thank
Happy
you.
New Year, everybody.
Bye.
Happy New Year, everybody.